My name is Emily Carter, and for 15 years I believed I was living the kind of life people dream about. If someone had asked me a month ago whether I trusted my husband, I wouldn't have hesitated for even a second. I would have smiled and answered, with my life. Looking back now, I realize trust doesn't disappear overnight. It fades quietly, hidden beneath routines, excuses, and little moments you choose to ignore because believing the truth would hurt too much. I just didn't know that yet. Our mornings always began the same way. Daniel would wake before me, quietly slipping out of bed so he wouldn't disturb my sleep. By the time I came downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee would fill the kitchen. Our two children, Ethan, who had just turned 12, and Sophie, who was 9, would be arguing over cereal while Daniel flipped pancakes on the stove. It wasn't a perfect family. No family is. But it felt real. We laughed together. We celebrated birthdays. We planned vacations. Every Friday night was movie night, complete with homemade popcorn and far too much chocolate. Every Sunday morning we drove to my parents' house for breakfast. Every anniversary Daniel surprised me with flowers, always choosing white lilies because he remembered they were my favorite. People often told me how lucky I was. "Emily," my best friend Rachel would say, "you hit the jackpot with Daniel." I believed her. After all, Daniel had always been dependable. When my father passed away 5 years earlier, Daniel never left my side. He held me through sleepless nights, helped my mother with paperwork, and reminded me that grief wasn't something I had to carry alone. When I received the inheritance my father left me, nearly $85,000, Daniel encouraged me to save it. "Your dad worked hard for that money," he told me. "We'll use it someday for something meaningful." His words comforted me. I never imagined that someday those same words would haunt me. Daniel worked as a regional sales manager, a job that required frequent travel. Some weeks he was home every evening. Other weeks he'd disappear for 2 or 3 days, returning exhausted with stories about difficult clients, delayed flights, and endless meetings. I never questioned him. Marriage, I believed, required trust. Besides, he always brought little souvenirs home. A snow globe from Chicago, chocolate from Vermont, a tiny keychain from Nashville. The children loved waiting for him to return. So did I. Every time he walked through the front door, our house seemed complete again. Or at least that's what I thought. There had been tiny moments over the years that didn't quite make sense. Phone calls he'd answer outside. Text messages he'd quickly clear from his screen. Business trips that seemed to happen more often than those of his coworkers. Whenever I asked, he had an explanation. Confidential client information. Last-minute meetings. Corporate restructuring. The answers sounded reasonable, and I wanted to believe them, because believing otherwise meant questioning the man I'd built my entire life around. One rainy Tuesday afternoon changed everything. It had started as one of those ordinary days that disappear into memory. The kids were at school. Daniel was supposed to be in Columbus for a 2-day conference. I had taken the afternoon off work because I wanted to reorganize our bedroom. Over the years we'd accumulated boxes, old clothes, and enough forgotten junk to fill a small storage unit. I opened drawers, sorted sweaters, folded blankets. Eventually I reached the top shelf of Daniel's closet. "I should finally clean this," I muttered to myself. Standing on a small step stool, I reached toward the back of the shelf. My fingertips brushed against something wooden. As I pulled it forward, my elbow accidentally knocked it against the wall. The box slipped from my hands. It crashed onto the hardwood floor with a loud crack. I climbed down quickly, expecting broken wood. Instead, I found an old oak box lying on its side. It was beautiful. Dark polished wood. Brass corners. A tiny engraved lock. I'd never seen it before, which immediately struck me as odd. There shouldn't have been anything in our house I'd never noticed. Curiosity got the better of me. Picked it up. It felt surprisingly heavy. There was no label, no initials, nothing that explained what it contained. Just a small brass lock. Normally, I respected Daniel's privacy. Everyone deserves a little space. But something about this box felt different. Why hide it on the highest shelf? Why lock it? I set it on the bed and stared at it for several minutes. Part of me wanted to put it back exactly where I'd found it. Another part whispered that married people shouldn't have secrets this carefully hidden. I walked away, made myself another cup of coffee, Tried folding laundry. But every few minutes my eyes drifted back toward the bedroom, toward the locked box. Finally I sighed. If it's nothing important, I told myself, I'll close it and never mention it. The lock was tiny. Surely the key couldn't be far away. I searched the obvious places first. Desk drawers. Nightstand. His dresser. Nothing. I almost gave up. Then I remembered something Daniel once joked about. If I ever hide treasure, he'd laughed years earlier, it'll be somewhere no thief would think to look. At the time I'd rolled my eyes. Now those words echoed in my head. I checked beneath drawers. Inside old coat pockets. Behind books. Still nothing. As I slid open the bottom drawer of his dresser, I noticed something unusual. A strip of tape underneath the wooden frame. Carefully peeling it back, I froze. A tiny brass key. My heartbeat quickened. For reasons I couldn't explain, my hands began to tremble. I stared at the key resting in my palm. I still had time to stop, to tape it back exactly where I'd found it, to pretend none of this had happened. Instead, I walked back to the bed. The key fit perfectly. The lock clicked open with almost no resistance. For a second, I simply looked at the lid. I suddenly felt guilty, like I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But another feeling was stronger. Fear. Fear that my husband had been hiding something important. Slowly, I lifted the lid. Inside wasn't jewelry, or cash, or old family keepsakes. Instead, I found neatly organized envelopes tied with faded blue ribbon, stacks of photographs, medical documents, birthday cards, a small stuffed rabbit that looked well loved. My confusion deepened. I picked up the photographs first. The top picture showed Daniel. He looked younger, maybe 15 years younger. He was holding a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. He wasn't smiling for the camera. He was looking down at the baby with tears in his eyes. I'd never seen this photograph before. My stomach tightened. I flipped it over. Written neatly on the back were 4 words. Daddy's little miracle. Daddy? I frowned. Our daughter Sophie wasn't born until years later. I reached for another photograph. This one showed the same little girl, perhaps 3 years old, sitting on Daniel's shoulders at a park. Another. Her first day of school. Another. A birthday cake with 7 candles. Another. Christmas morning. Every single photograph included Daniel. None included me. None included Ethan or Sophie. My breathing became shallow. No. I whispered. This can't be. With shaking fingers, I opened one of the envelopes. Inside was a birth certificate. I unfolded it carefully. The words blurred before my eyes until I forced myself to focus. Name Lily Grace Carter. Date of birth. 14 years ago. Father. Daniel Carter. Mother. Sarah Mitchell. I read it again. And again. My mind refused to understand. 14 years ago. Daniel and I had already been married for over a year. I flipped through more documents. School report cards. Doctor appointments. Father's Day cards written in a child's handwriting. One read, "Thank you for always coming to my school plays, Daddy. I love you more than all the stars." I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My husband, the man I trusted with my heart, had another daughter. Not from before we met. Not from some distant past. During our marriage. Every business trip. Every overnight meeting. Every excuse. Suddenly they all seemed different. The room spun around me. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the birth certificate as tears filled my eyes. Had my entire marriage been a lie? Had everyone known except me? Or was I the only fool who had believed the fairy tale? Then I heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I looked at the clock. 4:17 p.m. Daniel wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow. Panic surged through me. I quickly gathered every photograph, every letter, every document exactly as I'd found them. The ribbon. The envelopes. The stuffed rabbit. I closed the lid. Locked the box. Returned the key beneath the dresser. Just as I shoved the box back onto the top shelf, I heard the front door open downstairs. "Emily." Daniel called cheerfully. "I'm home." His voice sounded exactly the same. Warm. Comforting. Familiar. Yet somehow, completely unfamiliar. I wiped my tears as fast as I could and forced myself to breathe. Footsteps climbed the stairs. A moment later, he appeared in the bedroom doorway, smiling. "The conference ended early," he said, setting down his overnight bag. "I figured I'd surprise you." He leaned forward to kiss my forehead. For the first time in 15 years, I stepped back. The smile slowly disappeared from his face. "Emily." He looked confused. "What's wrong?" I stared into the eyes of the man I'd loved for half my life, and all I could think was one question. "Who are you?" He waited for my answer, but I couldn't speak, because deep inside, I already knew. The man standing in front of me was keeping a secret so enormous that it had the power to destroy everything we had ever built. And somehow, I had only uncovered the first piece of it. That night I barely slept. Daniel lay beside me as if nothing had happened. Within minutes, his breathing became slow and steady, the familiar rhythm of someone at peace. I stared at the ceiling. Every few seconds I glanced toward him. How could someone sleep so peacefully after carrying a secret like that for 14 years? Or maybe this wasn't the first time he'd come home pretending everything was normal. Maybe he'd done it hundreds of times. Every smile, every "I love you," every kiss goodnight. Every one of them now felt like another lie. Around 2 in the morning, I quietly slipped out of bed and walked downstairs. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the living room. I made myself a cup of tea, though my hands shook so badly I spilled half of it onto the kitchen counter. I sat alone at the table where we'd shared thousands of meals. It suddenly felt like I was sitting in a stranger's house. Questions flooded my mind. Who was Lily? Who was Sarah Mitchell? Did my children know they had a sister? Did Daniel love this other family the same way he loved us? Or were we the other family? I hated that thought the moment it entered my mind. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Daniel. Not yet. If I accused him now, he'd have time to invent another story. No. I needed the truth. The whole truth. And this time I wasn't going to settle for excuses. The next morning I forced myself to act normal. Daniel walked into the kitchen wearing his favorite navy blue shirt. "Morning," he said with a smile. "Morning. You okay? You seem tired." "I didn't sleep well." He nodded sympathetically. "Me neither. Long conference." The words hit me like a slap. Long conference. He had looked me straight in the eyes. And lied again. I wanted to scream. Instead, I simply poured coffee into his mug. He reached for my hand. "You know," he said, "I was thinking maybe we should take the kids to Florida this summer." I looked at him. The man planning a family vacation while hiding another daughter. How many times had he done this? Talked about our future while protecting his past? "I'll think about it," I replied quietly. He kissed my cheek before leaving for work. "I love you." The words hung in the air. For 15 years I'd answered automatically. This time, I couldn't. He paused at the front door. "You didn't say it back." I forced a weak smile. "I've got a headache." He hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Feel better." Then he left. The second his car disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my purse and car keys. Today, I was following him. Understand Keeping a safe distance wasn't easy. Daniel drove confidently through morning traffic, completely unaware that I was 3 cars behind him. My heart pounded every time he stopped at a red light. What if he looked in his mirror? What if he recognized my car? I kept reminding myself to stay calm. After nearly 40 minutes, he turned onto a quiet residential street I'd never visited before. The neighborhood wasn't fancy. Small brick homes lined both sides of the road. Children rode bicycles. Neighbors watered flowers. Dogs barked behind white picket fences. Daniel slowed his car. Then he parked in front of a modest 2-story house with blue shutters. I pulled over half a block away. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. "This is it," I whispered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the front door opened. A teenage girl rushed outside. She looked about 14. Long brown hair. Bright green eyes. She smiled the second she saw Daniel. And then, She ran straight into his arms. He hugged her tightly, not awkwardly, not politely, like a father who had missed his daughter. She buried her face against his shoulder. Even from across the street, I could hear her laughter. "I missed you, Dad." The word echoed in my ears. "Dad." Daniel laughed softly. "I missed you too, sweetheart." He kissed the top of her head, exactly the way he kissed Sophie's. Tears blurred my vision. I couldn't look away. The girl reached into her backpack and pulled out what looked like a report card. Daniel studied it. Then his face lit up. "I'm proud of you." She threw her arms around him again. My chest tightened. That wasn't a man visiting someone else's child. That was a father celebrating his daughter's success. The same father who had tucked my children into bed just 2 nights earlier. A few minutes later, another woman stepped onto the porch. She looked to be in her early 40s. Simple jeans, gray sweater, hair tied back. She smiled warmly at Daniel. Not nervously, not secretly, comfortably, as though he'd been part of her life for years. She kissed him lightly on the cheek. My stomach turned. I wanted to believe it was just a greeting. But then she took his hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled back. The 3 of them walked into the house together. Like a family. I felt sick. I lowered my head onto the steering wheel and burst into tears. Not quiet tears. The kind that leave your whole body shaking. I cried for everything I believed. For every anniversary. For every birthday. For every lonely evening I'd spent waiting for him to come home from another business trip. All those nights. He hadn't been alone in a hotel. He'd been here. With them. After nearly 20 minutes, I finally forced myself to breathe. I needed answers, not assumptions. I looked around the neighborhood. Across the street, an elderly woman was trimming roses in her front yard. An idea came to me. I walked over, trying to appear calm. "Good morning." She smiled kindly. "Morning, dear. I hope you don't mind me asking." I pointed casually toward the blue house. "I'm looking for someone who used to live there." "Oh, the Carter family." The woman smiled. "Oh yes, Daniel's family." My heart nearly stopped. "You know them?" "Oh, of course. They've been coming here for years." "Years. Not months. Years. Daniel's a nice man," she continued. "Always helping Sarah with repairs around the house." I swallowed hard. "Sarah. The girl's mother." She nodded toward the house. "Lily's such a sweet kid. Daniel never misses her birthdays. Never misses." I felt dizzy. The elderly woman kept talking, unaware that each sentence was breaking my heart. "He even coached her little soccer team when she was younger." Soccer. Daniel had told me he couldn't coach Ethan's baseball team because work kept him too busy. He'd lied. Again. "He seems like such a devoted father," the woman said with a smile. I forced myself to smile back. "Yes." My voice barely came out. "He certainly does." I thanked her and walked back to my car before my legs gave out beneath me. Instead of driving home, I parked beside a quiet lake on the edge of town. For over an hour I simply sat there. The water rippled gently in the breeze. Families walked along the path. Children fed ducks. Life carried on as though nothing had happened. Meanwhile, everything in mine had changed. I opened my phone. Hundreds of family photos filled my gallery. Daniel teaching Ethan to ride a bike. Daniel carrying Sophie on his shoulders. Daniel blowing out birthday candles beside me. I looked at each picture differently now. How many had been taken after he'd left Sarah's house? How many smiles had hidden guilt? How many memories were built on lies? My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Meeting ran longer than expected. Might be home late. Love you. I stared at the screen. He was texting me. while sitting inside another family's house. Another lie. Another effortless lie. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone. As I looked back toward the lake, one thing became painfully clear. I could no longer trust anything Daniel said. Not his words. Not his promises. Not even his love. But one question still haunted me. Who was Sarah? Was she the woman who had knowingly stolen my husband? Or was she another victim, trapped in the same web of lies? I had to find out. Because before I confronted Daniel, I needed to hear the truth from the one person who might not even know I existed. And deep down, I had a feeling that meeting Sarah was about to uncover a secret even bigger than the one I'd already found. I didn't sleep that night either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image. Daniel wrapping his arms around Lily. The smile on his face. The pride in his eyes. It wasn't the smile of a guilty man visiting a secret. It was the smile of a father who had never stopped loving his daughter. That hurt more than I could explain. Because if he could love Lily that deeply, why had he hidden her? And why had he hidden me from her? The questions refused to leave my mind. By morning, I had made another decision. I was going to meet Sarah. Not to scream. Not to accuse. Not to fight. I simply needed the truth. Because after 15 years of lies, I no longer knew what the truth looked like. I waited until I was certain Daniel had gone to work. Around 10 o'clock, I drove back to the quiet neighborhood. This time, I parked a little farther away. My heart was pounding so hard that I almost turned the car around. What if she knows about me? What if she laughs in my face? What if she's been helping Daniel deceive me all these years? Every terrible possibility raced through my mind. Till I got out of the car. Each step toward the blue house felt heavier than the last. By the time I reached the front porch, my palms were soaked with sweat. I stared at the doorbell. One press. One simple press. And my life would change forever. I closed my eyes. Then I rang it. A few moments later, footsteps approached. The door opened. Standing in front of me was the teenage girl I'd seen the day before. She looked surprised. Hi. Her smile was polite but cautious. Can I help you? Seeing her up close nearly took my breath away. She had Daniel's eyes. The same crooked smile. Even the tiny dimple in her left cheek. She looked so much like him that it was impossible to deny the truth. For a moment I couldn't speak. She tilted her head. Ma'am. Oh. I forced a smile. I'm sorry. I think I may have the wrong address. She smiled kindly. Who were you looking for? I hesitated. Then quietly answered. Sarah. Oh. My mom's home. I'll get her. She stepped inside, leaving the front door open. As I waited, I glanced around the hallway. Family photographs covered the walls. There was Lily as a baby. Lily learning to ride a bicycle. Lily wearing a graduation gown from middle school. Daniel appeared in almost every picture. Fishing trips. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. School concerts. There were years of memories hanging on those walls. Years that had happened while I believed my husband was away on business. Tears threatened to fall again. I quickly wiped them away before anyone returned. A few seconds later, Sarah walked into the hallway. She looked exactly as she had the previous day. Simple. Kind. A little tired. But there was something else in her expression. Curiosity. Hello. I'm Sarah. Can I help you? For several seconds we simply looked at each other. Neither of us knew what to say. Finally I took a deep breath. My name is Emily. She smiled politely. It's nice to meet you. I swallowed hard. I almost couldn't finish the sentence. I'm Daniel's wife. The smile disappeared from her face. She blinked. I'm sorry. I think you said. I'm Daniel Carter's wife. Silence. Absolute silence. Sarah stared at me as though she'd stopped understanding English. Then she laughed nervously. I think there's been some misunderstanding. There isn't. We've been married for 15 years. The color drained from her face. No. She whispered it so quietly I barely heard her. No. He told me. Her voice broke. He told me he was divorced. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. For almost a full minute we simply stared at each other. Then Sarah stepped backward. You'd better come inside. The living room was warm and cozy. Fresh flowers sat on the coffee table. Children's books were stacked neatly on a shelf. Nothing about the house suggested secrets. It looked like the home of an ordinary family. Sarah offered me coffee. I declined. Neither of us had an appetite. She sat across from me. Her hands trembled just as much as mine. Finally she spoke. How long have you been married? 15 years. When did you meet him? I told her. Our first date. Our wedding. The birth of Ethan. The birth of Sophie. As I spoke, Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Then she quietly stood up. I'll be right back. She disappeared upstairs. A minute later she returned carrying a small photo album. She placed it on the table between us. I think. Her voice cracked. I think you should see this. Inside were photographs from 14 years earlier. There was Daniel, standing beside Sarah in a hospital room, holding newborn Lily. Another photograph showed Daniel painting the nursery. Another showed him assembling a crib. One picture caught my attention immediately. Daniel was wearing the exact same blue sweater he had worn in a family photograph with me. I frowned. Then I checked the date. The pictures had been taken on the same weekend. I looked up slowly. He told me, Sarah whispered through tears, that his marriage had ended before Lily was born. I had no idea. I swear to you, I never would have. She couldn't finish the sentence. I believed her. Not because I wanted to. Because I saw genuine shock in her eyes. She wasn't pretending. She was discovering the truth at the exact same moment I was. For the next 2 hours, we compared memories. Daniel had used business trips to visit Sarah, corporate conferences, sales meetings, emergency travel. Every excuse he gave me, he gave her too. When he spent Christmas morning with me, he told Sarah he had to visit his sick father. When he spent Thanksgiving with Sarah, he told me his company had scheduled a mandatory conference. Every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary, he had carefully divided his life into 2 separate worlds. Neither woman had ever suspected the other existed. Sarah stood and walked toward a cabinet. She pulled out a wooden box. My heart skipped. It looked almost identical to the one hidden in Daniel's closet. She opened it. Inside were dozens of letters, cards, receipts, every birthday gift Daniel had ever bought Lily, every Mother's Day card he'd given Sarah, every promise he'd written. One letter caught my attention. Its envelope had never been opened. Sarah frowned. That's strange. He told me never to read it. What? He said. She looked confused. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should finally open it. We looked at each other. For several seconds, neither of us touched the envelope. Then Sarah slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Daniel's handwriting. She began reading aloud. If you're reading this, then the truth has finally come out. We froze. Sarah continued. I know one day Emily and Lily will discover each other. My heart stopped. He knew. He had always known this day would come. Sarah's voice trembled. I'm sorry for every lie. I convinced myself I was protecting everyone. But I know now. I only protected myself. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She kept reading. There is one more truth neither of you knows. My pulse quickened. One more truth? What could possibly be worse than this? Sarah looked up at me. Fear filled both of our faces. She returned to the letter. If you've reached this point, then you deserve to know why I could never leave either family. The room became so quiet I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock. I held my breath. Then Sarah read the next sentence. And the world shifted beneath our feet. Lily isn't my only secret. The letter continued on to another page. Neither of us had the courage to turn it over. Because somehow, deep inside, we both knew that whatever was written there was about to change everything we thought we understood. And for the first time since discovering the locked box, I realized something terrifying. Finding Lily had never been the end of the mystery. It had only been the beginning. For a long moment neither Sarah nor I moved. The second page of Daniel's letter rested on the coffee table between us. It felt as though that single sheet of paper weighed 1,000 pounds. Outside I could hear birds singing. A lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. Life carried on as though nothing extraordinary was happening. But inside that little blue house, 2 women's lives had already been turned upside down. Sarah looked at me, her eyes red from crying. I don't know if I can read the rest. I swallowed hard. I don't know if I can hear it. Neither answer changed the fact that we had no choice. If Daniel had hidden another secret, we deserved to know. Sarah slowly picked up the second page. Her hands trembled so violently that I reached over and held the bottom corner to keep the paper steady. She took a deep breath. Then she began reading. Understand If you're reading this, then both of you probably hate me. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Hate isn't even the right word anymore. Sarah continued. You deserve the truth, even if it costs me everything. She paused before reading the next paragraph. Lily isn't my only secret. My heartbeat quickened. 14 years ago, when Sarah became pregnant, I wanted to tell Emily everything. I truly did. But before I found the courage, another tragedy changed all of our lives. Sarah frowned. What tragedy? She kept reading. Emily's father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father's illness. I remembered those months all too well. Hospital visits. Chemotherapy. Doctors speaking in hushed voices. Daniel had been my rock through every painful moment. Or so I believed. Sarah looked at me. He knew your father was sick? I nodded silently. She returned to the letter. Emily was falling apart. Every day she cried herself to sleep. I convinced myself that telling her about Lily would destroy her completely. I closed my eyes. 4 years, I'd been grateful for Daniel's support during my father's illness. Now I wondered if his kindness had been driven by guilt instead of love. Understand Sarah continued reading. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Every time I planned to confess, something happened. Emily's father died. Then Ethan was born. Then Lily started school. Then Sophie arrived. With every passing year, telling the truth became harder. I shook my head slowly. No, I whispered. It didn't become harder. It became easier for him to keep lying. Sarah nodded. He kept choosing himself. Exactly. Every single day. He woke up, looked in the mirror, and chose another lie. Understand Sarah reached the next paragraph. You both believe I live 2 separate lives because I love 2 women. She stopped reading. Her face filled with confusion. What does that mean? I leaned closer. Keep going. You're wrong. The words echoed in the silent room. I never stopped loving Emily. I rolled my eyes. Oh, please. Sarah ignored my reaction and continued. What I felt for Sarah was never planned. She became pregnant before I understood how badly I'd destroyed everything. Sarah lowered the letter. So, I was just. She couldn't finish. Her tears returned. I reached across the table and took her hand. For the first time, neither of us saw the other as an enemy. We saw another woman whose life had been manipulated by the same man. You didn't know. She looked at me. I swear to you. I believe you. Those 3 words seemed to break something inside her. She burst into tears. So many years. I thought we were building a future. I thought he stayed away because of work. I squeezed her hand gently. I believed exactly the same thing. Nearly 20 minutes passed before either of us spoke again. Finally, Sarah asked quietly, "What are you going to do?" "I honestly don't know." "You'll leave him." I stared at the floor. I thought that would be an easy answer. But 15 years. You can't erase 15 years in one afternoon. She nodded. I understand. She truly did. Because she'd spent 14 years believing in a future that had never existed. Understand. Before I left, Sarah handed me a small envelope. "I think this belongs to you." Inside was a photograph. Daniel. Me. Our wedding day. I frowned. "Why do you have this?" She looked embarrassed. "I found it 3 years ago." "What?" It slipped out of one of Daniel's jacket pockets. He told me it was an old picture of his cousin. I stared at the photograph. Even then, even when she unknowingly held proof of his marriage in her hands, he had lied without hesitation. It had become second nature. Understand. When I returned home, Daniel wasn't there yet. The house was quiet. I wandered from room to room, looking at everything differently. The family portraits on the walls, our wedding picture above the fireplace, the vacation photos from Disney World. Each memory now carried a question. Was he texting Sarah while we smiled for these pictures? Did he leave our anniversary dinner to call Lily? How many memories had been shared with someone else? I stopped in front of our wedding portrait. We looked so young, so hopeful, so certain we'd spend the rest of our lives together. I reached up and touched the glass. "I really loved you." The words came out in a whisper. I would have forgiven almost anything, but not 15 years of lies. That evening, Daniel came home carrying takeout. I thought we'd have a relaxing dinner. He smiled as he placed the bags on the kitchen counter. "I even brought your favorite Chinese food." Normally, I would have hugged him and said, I simply watched him. He noticed. "What? You've been acting strange since yesterday." "I'm worried about you." The irony almost made me laugh. He was worried about me. After deceiving me for 15 years. "I went shopping today." "Oh, where?" I looked directly into his eyes. "Oak Street." His smile disappeared for the briefest moment. It was only a second. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. Because Oak Street was where Sarah lived. "You were on Oak Street?" "Yes." "What were you doing there?" "I met someone." His jaw tightened. "Who?" I held his gaze. "A woman named Sarah." The color drained from his face. For a moment I thought he might collapse. He opened his mouth, closed it again. His hands began shaking. Finally, he whispered one word. "No." I nodded slowly. "Yes." Silence filled the kitchen. The takeout containers sat untouched on the counter. Steam still rose from the food. Neither of us cared. I met Lily too. His eyes filled with panic. "Emily. Please. Let me explain." I folded my arms. "Go ahead." He took one step toward me. "I can explain everything." I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "No. You can explain one thing." He waited. I asked the question that had haunted me since opening the locked box. "When were you planning to tell me?" He looked down at the floor. His silence gave me the answer before he spoke. I don't know. Exactly. He had never planned to tell me. If I hadn't found that wooden box, he would have continued living 2 lives until the day he died. The realization hurt more than the affair itself, because it proved something I had desperately hoped wasn't true. This wasn't one terrible mistake. It was 15 years of deliberate choices. One lie after another. Every single day. I looked toward the staircase where our children were doing their homework, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change forever. Then I looked back at the man I'd called my husband for 15 years. "I think it's time," I said quietly, "for our children to learn who their father really is." Daniel's eyes widened with fear. He reached for my arm. Please don't. I stepped away. No more lies, Daniel. No more secrets. But before I tell them, I took a deep breath. There's one question you still haven't answered. He looked at me defeated. What question? I remembered the final line of the letter. The sentence neither Sarah nor I could understand. Lily isn't your only secret. I stared into his eyes. What else have you been hiding from us? Daniel's face turned completely white. And in that moment, I knew the answer would be even more devastating than everything that had come before. Daniel didn't answer me. He simply stood there in the middle of our kitchen, staring at the floor. The silence stretched so long that I could hear the clock above the refrigerator ticking. Tick, tick, tick. For 15 years that clock had measured birthdays, anniversaries, family dinners, and lazy Sunday mornings. Now it was measuring the end of my marriage. I folded my arms tightly across my chest. I asked you a question. His shoulders slumped. I know. What else have you been hiding? He rubbed both hands over his face, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. You deserve the truth. I deserved it 15 years ago. He nodded. You're right. Those 2 words should have comforted me. Instead, they only made me angrier. He was finally admitting I was right, but only because he had no other choice. If I had never found that wooden box, he would still be lying to me. Understand Daniel slowly sat at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd celebrated our children's birthdays. The same table where we'd planned family vacations. The same table where we'd laughed until midnight playing board games. Today it felt like a courtroom. I remained standing. I don't have all night. He looked up at me. The letter. You read it. Yes. And Sarah. I met her. He closed his eyes. I never wanted the 2 of you to meet. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't want the truth to meet itself. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. After a long silence he finally spoke. The other secret isn't another woman. I frowned. Then what is it? He hesitated again. I've been stealing from you. For a moment I thought I'd misheard him. What? He looked ashamed. Your inheritance. My heart skipped a beat. My father's money? He nodded. I've been taking it. Understand I stared at him, unable to process his words. My father left me $85,000. We agreed it would stay in savings. I know. So what do you mean you've been taking it? Daniel swallowed hard. I started borrowing from it years ago. Borrowing. My voice rose. You borrowed without asking? It was supposed to be temporary. How much? He looked away. Daniel. How much? He whispered. Almost all of it. I felt my knees weaken. No. You're lying. I wish I were. My hand flew to my mouth. You told me the account was growing. I know. You showed me statements. I altered them. Everything around me blurred. You forged bank statements? I printed copies. You made fake documents? His silence answered me. Understand I stumbled backward until I reached the kitchen counter. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot, too unfamiliar. My father's money. The money Dad had worked his entire life to save. The money he hoped would protect me and my children. Gone. I remembered every conversation Daniel and I had ever had about that inheritance. We should leave it alone. It's safer earning interest. Maybe someday we'll help Ethan through college. Every word had been a lie. I looked at him in disbelief. Where did it go? He rubbed his forehead. Some of it paid debts. What debts? I made bad investments. What investments? I thought I could double the money. You gambled with my inheritance? No. It wasn't gambling. It was business. You lost it. His head dropped. Yes. I took a shaky breath. And the rest? He didn't answer. The rest, Daniel. He whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear him. I helped Sarah. I froze. You. He nodded slowly. I paid Lily's school tuition. You used my father's money. I paid medical bills. My money. I helped buy the house. The word struck harder than anything he'd said all day. The blue house. He nodded. I stared at him. Every business trip. Every birthday gift. Every repair. Every mortgage payment. Part of it had been paid with the money my father had left for me. I could barely breathe. So while I believed we were saving for our children's future, you were building another family's life. Tears streamed down his face. I never wanted to hurt you. The sentence made something inside me snap. I slammed both hands onto the table. You never wanted to hurt me? My voice echoed through the house. You cheated on me. You lied to me. You stole from me. You forged bank documents. You used my dead father's money to support another family. And you say you never wanted to hurt me? Daniel buried his face in his hands. I know. No. You don't know. You have absolutely no idea what you've done. At that moment, footsteps came down the stairs. Ethan stood in the doorway. Dad. His voice was uncertain. Mom. Behind him was Sophie, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. They had heard us. My heart broke. I quickly wiped my tears. It's okay. It isn't okay, Ethan replied. I've never heard you yell like that. Daniel stood up. Kids. Ethan looked at him. What's going on? For a brief second, Daniel looked at me. He was silently begging me not to tell them. The old Emily might have protected him. The woman standing there now couldn't. I knelt in front of my children. There are some things your father should have told us a long time ago. Daniel interrupted. Emily, please. I ignored him. Ethan. Sophie. I love you more than anything. And nothing that happens between your father and me will ever change how much we love you. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Are you getting divorced? The question hit me like a knife. Children always know more than adults think. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I hugged both of them tightly. I promise I'll explain everything. Daniel quietly left the room. For the first time since I'd met him, he walked away because he had no defense left. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep, I went upstairs to our bedroom. Daniel was packing a suitcase. Neither of us spoke. He folded shirts slowly, carefully, almost as though moving quietly could soften what had happened. Finally, I asked, Where are you going? My brothers. For how long? I don't know. He zipped the suitcase. Before leaving, he looked around the room. Our wedding photo sat on the dresser. He picked it up, studied it for several seconds, then placed it back exactly where it had been. I really did love you. His voice cracked. I looked at him through tears. I believe that. He looked surprised. I believe you loved me. But love without honesty isn't love. It's possession. It's comfort. It's fear. You didn't stay because you loved me. You stayed because telling the truth would have cost you everything. He lowered his head. You've already lost everything. He nodded. I know. Then he picked up his suitcase and walked toward the bedroom door. Halfway there, he stopped. Without turning around, he said, There's something else. I closed my eyes. Of course there was. What now? The investments. I waited. They weren't all accidents. I slowly opened my eyes. What does that mean? Daniel finally turned around. His face had gone pale. I wasn't the only one making decisions. I frowned. What are you talking about? He swallowed hard. My older brother, Michael. He convinced me to move the money. He handled the investments. He promised we'd make millions. I stared at him. So your brother knows? Daniel nodded. He knows everything. My pulse quickened. Everything. About Sarah. About Lily. The inheritance. The fake statements. He helped me hide it. A chill ran down my spine. For 15 years, I had believed only one person had betrayed me. Now I realized someone else had been protecting those lies all along. Daniel looked at me one last time. If you want the whole truth. He paused, tears filling his eyes. Don't ask me. Ask Michael. He walked out of the bedroom. Seconds later, I heard the front door close. Then, silence. I stood alone in the room we had shared for 15 years. The man I had built my life around was gone, but his final words echoed through my mind. Ask Michael. I looked out the bedroom window as Daniel's car disappeared into the darkness. For a moment I considered letting him leave forever. But then I remembered my father's inheritance, the forged documents, the years of deception, and now, a brother who apparently knew everything. I realized my fight wasn't over. In many ways, it was only beginning. The morning after Daniel left, I woke up to a house that felt painfully quiet. For 15 years, my mornings had started with the sound of his footsteps downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee, and his cheerful voice calling the children for breakfast. That morning, there was nothing, just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space beside me. The imprint where Daniel had slept was still visible. For a moment I allowed myself to cry, not because I wanted him back, but because I was mourning the life I thought I had. The marriage I believed in had never truly existed. It had been built on half-truths, hidden bank statements, fake business trips, and carefully rehearsed lies. I wasn't grieving the man who had left. I was grieving the man I thought he had been. Over the next few days, I focused entirely on Ethan and Sophie. Children notice everything. Even when adults try to protect them. Sophie stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. I think she already knew the answer. Ethan became unusually quiet. One evening while I was washing dishes, he walked into the kitchen. Mom. Yes. Did Dad do something really bad? I dried my hands and turned toward him. What makes you ask that? He looked down. I heard you crying. I've never heard you cry like that before. My heart broke. I wrapped my arms around him. Sometimes adults make mistakes. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Is he still my dad? I smiled through my own tears. Always. No matter what happens between your father and me, nothing will ever change that. He nodded slowly. I still love him. I know. So do I. He looked surprised. You do. I'll always love the good memories. But loving someone doesn't mean you have to accept being lied to. That was a lesson I hoped both of my children would carry for the rest of their lives. A week later I met Sarah again. This time neither of us felt like strangers. We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes. Neither of us wore makeup. Neither of us pretended to be okay. For the first few minutes we simply sat in silence. Then Sarah reached across the table. I'm sorry. I shook my head. You don't owe me an apology. If I'd known. I know. She lowered her eyes. Lily's devastated. She keeps asking why her father lied. I sighed. So do Ethan and Sophie. We looked at each other. Two mothers. Different lives. The same heartbreak. After a long pause, Sarah quietly asked, what happens now? I smiled sadly. Now we stop letting Daniel's lies decide our future. She nodded. I'd like the kids to know each other. I had been thinking the same thing. They're innocent. They deserve to be siblings. Not secrets. Not strangers. Family. The kind of family Daniel should have given them years ago. A month later, the children met for the first time. I was terrified. Would they resent one another? Would they blame Lily? Would Lily blame them? Instead, something beautiful happened. Sophie walked up to Lily with a shy smile. I like your backpack. Lily smiled back. Thanks. Within 10 minutes they were laughing together. Ethan offered to teach Lily how to play basketball. They spent the afternoon in the park, talking and laughing as though they had known each other forever. Watching them together made me realize something. Children aren't born carrying hatred. Adults teach it. And I refused to let Daniel's mistakes become theirs. 3 months later, my attorney finalized the divorce papers. The judge looked at both of us before signing the final order. Marriage requires trust, he said quietly. Without trust, there is no partnership. His words echoed through the courtroom. Daniel never argued, never blamed me, never tried to stop the divorce. He simply signed his name. Then I folded the note and placed it in a drawer. Some memories deserve to stay in the past. Another year passed. Life slowly found a new rhythm. Ethan joined his school's basketball team. Sophie discovered a love for painting. Lily often came over on weekends, and before long, she wasn't Daniel's other daughter. She was simply their sister. Sarah and I became unlikely friends. Not because the pain disappeared, but because healing sometimes grows in places where bitterness once lived. We learned to support each other. We attended the children's school events together. We celebrated birthdays together. Not as rivals, as mothers who refused to let one man's deception define our families. One warm summer evening, nearly 3 years after I found the locked wooden box, I was cleaning the attic. Hidden behind an old suitcase was the same oak box that had changed my life forever. I carried it downstairs and placed it on the dining table. For several minutes I simply looked at it. Then I unlocked it one last time. The photographs were still there. The letters. The birthday cards. The memories. This time, they didn't make me cry. Instead, they reminded me how far I had come. I gathered every document and placed them inside a large envelope. The next morning, I drove to Daniel's apartment. When he opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. Without saying a word, I handed him the envelope. He looked down. The box. I nodded. It belongs to your past. And so do I. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I never stopped loving you. I smiled gently. I know. But love isn't enough. He lowered his head. No, it isn't. I turned to leave. Just before I reached my car, he called my name one last time. Emily. I looked back. Thank you. For never teaching the children to hate me. I smiled. They deserve better than that. Then I drove away. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with peace. Today, as I tell you this story, 5 years have passed since the day I opened that locked wooden box. People often ask whether I regret those 15 years. The answer surprises them. No, because those years gave me Ethan. They gave me Sophie. They even gave me Lily, a young woman who now calls me whenever she needs advice or simply wants to talk. Do I wish Daniel had told the truth? Every single day. But I also know this. The truth has a way of finding the light, no matter how carefully it's hidden. If you're listening to my story while carrying a secret, remember this. Every lie demands another lie to protect it. Eventually, the weight becomes too heavy to carry. And if you're the one who has been betrayed, hear me carefully. Never measure your worth by someone else's choices. You are not responsible for another person's dishonesty. You are responsible only for what you choose to do after the truth is revealed. The day I found that locked box, I believed my life had ended. I was wrong. It was the day my real life finally began. Sometimes, losing the person you trusted the most is the painful beginning of finding yourself. And looking back now, I wouldn't trade the woman I became for the illusion I once lived in. When everything was finished, he asked if we could speak outside. We stood on the courthouse steps. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I had told you the truth." I believed him. Regret was written all over his face. But regret doesn't erase consequences. My forgiveness, I said softly, isn't the same as another chance. He nodded slowly. I understand. I hope someday you forgive yourself. He looked confused. I already forgive myself. His eyes widened. You do? Yes. Because none of this was my fault. For years, I had blamed myself for every little problem in our marriage. I wondered if I hadn't been pretty enough, patient enough, supportive enough. Now I finally understood. Someone else's dishonesty is never your failure. It is theirs. The following spring, I decided to do something I had postponed for years. I used the remaining money I had managed to recover from Daniel's fraudulent accounts to open a small interior design studio. It had been my dream before I got married. Life had simply gotten in the way. The first few months were difficult. I worked long hours. I doubted myself constantly. But every new client reminded me that I was capable of building a future with my own hands. One afternoon, as I unlocked my office door, I noticed a small envelope on the welcome desk. There was no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for showing our children what real strength looks like." No signature. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel's. I smiled sadly.